What's up, everybody? Jimmy Faluca reporting solo for only my second request question by the same guy, actually. Travis, if you guys remember, I conducted a request from my friend Travis off the pages that I'm on, asking for my WrestleMania 32 card, which you guys could look in the archives and find. Travis asked me a very interesting question that I have decided to answer here on the show because I felt that there was a lot of material to come out of this question, and I felt it would be a good subject to bring up. Travis asked me a very simple question. What do you expect out of a wrestling show? Travis, here's your answer. And maybe this could shed some light on why I have some of the opinions that I do, this, that, the other thing. So this way it's not all blind, hatred or love or whatever the hell it is you want to call it. What I expect out of a wrestling show is very simple. I don't really expect much. That's why I get so frustrated. It baffles me that the simplest of things that you would find in any good story, which is basically what pro wrestling is, it's basically, it's theater, it's live theater. What I look for in any story is compelling characters that I care about, that I have a reason to be invested in. Like, I'll give an example. For those of us that are Star Wars fans, and I won't give away any spoilers to anyone who hasn't seen it yet. Yes, that can ruin the movie for some people, and I am considerate of that. For anyone that's been a fan of Star Wars knows, episodes 1, 2, and 3, the prequels, really weren't that good. George Lucas apparently, I think, was on some weird acid trip and just, decided to do what he did, and the prequels were what they were. Episode 7, he did not have 150% control like he did in those prequels, and the movie already in its second week has, I think it's 1.5 billion. It's done incredibly well. I went to see it twice already. Once with my friends and second time with my family. My father's a huge Star Wars fan. Matter of fact, today we were putting away a lot of our Christmas decorations. I managed to find all his old Star Wars stuff. I mean, he's got original Stormtroopers from when the toys first came out. It's pretty cool. Star Wars Episode 7 was excellent, at least from my perspective. I absolutely loved it. And one of the things I loved about it is that within 45 minutes of that movie, there were 4 characters that I gave a shit about, that I was invested in. What are they doing? Rey was number 1, Finn was number 2, Poe was number 3, and Kylo Ren was another. I don't care how anyone tries to spin it about Kylo Ren. Oh, he's a goth boy, he's a crybaby bitch. Excuse me. The dude has displayed force powers that no other Sith Lord before him has been able to do. The mind probing. The way he was able to hold that blaster in place while conducting a conversation, and that blaster was only let go when he said so. Obi-Wan Kenobi gets slashed in the leg and the arm in episode 2 and is down for the count, but this guy takes a blaster to the stomach, fights off 2 people, but he's a bitch. That makes absolutely no sense. Point I'm trying to make is, within 45 minutes of Star Wars Episode 7, I was given 4 characters to give a shit about on what they were doing. All of them. I cared about them equally. In the WWE world, you're not really given a lot of characters to care about. And you can't count guys like Brock Lesnar, The Undertaker, Triple H, John Cena, Randy Orton, and The Rock. You can't count those guys, and the reason I say that is because you have already been given a reason to care about them because their time is already past them. I love The Undertaker to death. He's my favorite wrestler of all time. His time is over. Sting is another guy. I love him to death. His time is over. Whether anyone wants to admit it or not, The Rock's time is up. He had his time. John Cena, 15-time world champion. He has had his time. Randy Orton may be forced to retire due to injuries, and I feel terrible for him. No one should ever have to retire due to injury. They should only retire when they choose to retire. No one. What I'm trying to say is they should have the choice to retire. They shouldn't be forced into retirement due to injury. because that's a very painful experience, both physically and emotionally. The point I'm trying to make is those guys have already had their time. What guys today should you, as the viewer, care about? Should you care about Seth Rollins? No, he's already been beaten clean, fresh, clean as a daisy, plenty of times. Dean Ambrose has been beaten clean plenty of times. Bray Wyatt's been beaten clean plenty of times. Kevin Owens. Do I need to continue? Adrian Neville. Do I have to continue? You're not giving anyone that you're supposed to care about. The only guy I could think of that hasn't been beaten clean multiple times is Roman Reigns, and he's a guy I like. He's a guy I really like. The point is, you're not given characters to care about except for their hand-chosen guy. And that's one of the things, Travis, if you're watching, that I look for. I look for a bunch of compelling characters that I should care about. I know, Travis, you're a huge John Cena fan, so I'll try to keep the Cena hate at a minimum. But one of the reasons I can't stand him is because he is a representation of the WWE model of, I'm the only one that matters, everyone else is just banter fodder, and you're going to learn to like it. It's ridiculous. What good is that show if he's the only one that matters? What good is that show if only Roman Reigns matters? What good is that show if only Daniel Bryan matters? It makes no sense. None whatsoever. There should be, at the very least, at least in my estimation, there should be at least 6 guys that could conceivably become the heavyweight champion, and it could be 150% believable. Back in the 80s, in the WWF, the golden era, you know how many guys could have been the WWF champion and would have been believable? Hulk Hogan, the Macho Man Randy Savage, Andre the Giant, the Ultimate Warrior, Jake the Snake Roberts, Ravishing Rick Rude, or Ted DiBiase. If any of those guys won the WWF championship, it would have been 100% believable. Let's go to the next era. Let's go to the new generation. Any of these guys could have been the WWF champion, and it would have been 150% believable. Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, The Undertaker, Yokozuna, Diesel. That's 5 guys. I would take 5 today instead of the 1 I'm afforded. Let's go to the Attitude Era. It's even bigger. The guys that could have been the WWF champion, and it would have been 150% believable. Stone Cold, The Rock, The Undertaker, Triple H, Mankind, The Big Show, Kane, Kurt Angle. Jesus Christ, you have 8 guys right there that any of them could be the champ, and it's more than believable. Let's go to the Ruthless Aggression era. How many guys could have been the WWE or World Heavyweight Champion, and it could have been 150% believable? Shawn Michaels, Triple H, The Undertaker, Batista, Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, Kurt Angle, Brock Lesnar, The Big Show. I could continue to go on and on. Almost a dozen guys. Eddie Guerrero. All these guys could have been the heavyweight champion, and it could have been 150% believable. Aside from Randy Orton and John Cena of the PG era, how many guys were built up that they could believably be the heavyweight champion? Did any of you buy CM Punk as the heavyweight champion? I certainly didn't. Wasn't built up that much. Edge was one guy, aside from John Cena and Randy Orton, the 2 you were usually afforded. But that's 3 guys. It's really not a whole lot of star power. And don't you notice that those 2, the 2 main Breakfast Club guys, Orton and Cena, those 2 at the top, nobody else was allowed to go up the ladder. There's not that many stars. After Frank has mentioned this many times on the show, once they got past 2011, there were no excuses because they had the talent. CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, Cesaro, Bray Wyatt, those are 4 other guys. In my estimation, should have been built up sufficiently where they could have been the world champion and it could have been 150% believable. The only ones that have been put in those positions are John Cena and Randy Orton, hence the resentment. Because CM Punk, when he was the WWE champion, I don't care anyone tries to spin it, he was a mid-card WWE champion. Not a top guy WWE champion. And that was bullshit. I don't care anyone tries to spin it. It was bullshit. If you're going to make him the WWE champion, he's supposed to be the most important guy on the roster. You know, Stone Cold Steve Austin for so long would say, if you don't want that belt, you don't belong here. Punk had that belt. Was he closing out pay-per-views? Was he in the final segments of Raw 9 times out of 10? Of course not. Because his name wasn't John Cena. Let's get to Daniel Bryan. That guy would have never even got the title in 2014 if the fans didn't rebel and if Batista didn't walk out. I don't care anyone tries to spin it. If you actually believe they were going to give Daniel Bryan that belt if the fans didn't rebel, then you are stupid. I am sorry. I have to call a spade a spade. They were never giving the guy the title after he lost it to Orton. It was never happening. He was only going to get to a certain level, and don't think they would have revisited it if we didn't do what we did, because they wouldn't have. You know, how many guys have come out and said Bryan was supposed to wrestle at WrestleMania 30 against Sheamus? Imagine how that crowd would have been after the streak ended if you actually got Orton versus Batista. But I'm sure some of you would have tried to excuse the fans' behavior, which makes absolutely no sense, because there would have been no justification for that. Let's look at Bray Wyatt. That guy should be a WWE Championship contender, and the way I'm looking at him, by the end of the year, I wouldn't be surprised if he's future endeavored. What have they done with him? Since WrestleMania 30, what have they done with Bray Wyatt that has done him any favors? Zero. Absolutely zero. Let's look at Cesaro. They started him off nicely. United States champion, tag team champion, a couple times. Friggin' guy wins the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. They hold Andre as this, a legend, which he is. Andre is a legend. He was one of the first true phenoms of the WWF, WWE, whatever the hell you want to call it. You would think that because they have this Battle Royal named after Andre, they would want that Battle Royal to be as prestigious as possible. Cesaro wins it in legendary fashion and goes on to do absolutely fucking nothing. At no fault of his own. Because the guy delivers in the ring. Isn't that kind of a disservice to not only Cesaro, but to Andre as well? At least from my perspective, it is. That's one of the things, Travis, I look for. Multiple compelling characters that I, as the viewer, should care about. Because that's what wrestling is. Here is a good guy. Here is a bad guy. They are going to fight. Why should I care? As much as people try to get on me for loving the technical wrestling aspect of it, because I do love it. I'm a Savage Steamboat, Flair Steamboat, Bret Owen type guy. I love that type of wrestling. But I also subscribe to the Sting versus NWO, Kane versus Taker, Austin versus McMahon. Great storylines that'll suck you in. That'll make you want to tune in every week. A little bit of both is not too much story and too much wrestling isn't good. You get a mixture of the two, fits perfectly. And I just feel the WWE hasn't been delivering on that. And that's one of the things I look for. Another thing I look for in pro wrestling is the fans' voices being heard. If the fans are cheering somebody and you're not pushing them, that is stupid. It is stupid on its face. Dean Ambrose, who everyone knows I dislike personally, for a lot of the comments he made last year about the audience, and I'm sorry. You could roll your eyes as I say this, but no wrestler has the right to tell the fans what they should and should not like. No wrestler has any right to tell the fans, doesn't matter what you think, he's still going to get rich off of yous. That's fucked up. Seriously. And I tell this to any fan that can hear me. Don't ever let any fucking wrestler intimidate you on who to like. You like who you want. It's that simple. But if the fans are getting behind somebody, you don't fight that. You embrace that. You protect that. It's like Cesaro. I'll use Cesaro as an example. Guy was getting fucking over. What did they do? They stuck him with Heyman, who was fresh off of managing the guy that basically shot John Wayne in the back. Why would you do that? And then do nothing with it? What sense does that make? Dean Ambrose was fucking getting hot in the middle of last year when he was feuding with Rollins over the WWE Championship. And now what's the fucking guy doing? He's playing second fiddle to Roman Reigns. That guy should, all three members of the Shield to me are good. And there's no reason for Dean Ambrose to not get past that level. And he hasn't, even though he was more over than both those guys. Does that make any sense to you, Travis? Dean Ambrose was more over than Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns combined, and the guy hasn't been the WWE Champion yet. What sense does that make? And please don't tell me to just wait it out. They ain't got any plans for him to win that title, and you know it. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'll go to another guy that some of my usual commenters can't stand, simply because the fans like him, which makes absolutely no sense, is Daniel Bryan. And I actually had a conversation with my friend Mike recently, and one of his friends, that their answer to me was, we shit on these guys because the fans are so behind them and they complain about them. Well, gentlemen, maybe the fans wouldn't be so incessant if the WWE would actually give the audience what they want to see, which is basically what this shit has always been about. They didn't push Stone Cold Steve Austin to the moon because he was their original plan. You need to remember history. Stone Cold Steve Austin, they tried everything in their power to make him a villain. This is from JR's own mouth. We tried everything we could to make him the biggest bad guy in the company, but every week we just heard more and more cheering, and we just couldn't fight the audience. Why has that changed? If a guy's getting over, you protect that. You invest in that. What's the fucking worst that could happen? You have no competition. So there's no risk. It makes no sense. Guy I don't really care for. Let me see. What's a guy on the roster that I don't really care for that much? Because there are a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of people say all I do is complain for no reason. No, there's a lot of guys in that roster I really like. I just have no faith that the WWE is going to do anything with them. Like, okay, Tyson Kidd. Don't care much for him. I think he's a good in-ring worker, but other than that, I don't really care for him. But if the guy gets over, fucking push him. It's like Dean Ambrose, I've mentioned many times I don't like him. The fucking guy is over, you do something with him. You don't waste that momentum. It makes no sense. And now let's go to the other side of it. If a guy is a hero and he's getting booed, you turn him heel. I mean, what is so difficult about understanding that concept? I'll name 3 of the biggest stars in the history of the business. Hulk Hogan, Bret Hart, and The Rock. Those are pretty big names. They were getting booed. They turned heel and ended up doing better for themselves. Think about this. I think Bret Hart's best work was when he was with the New Hart Foundation. And a lot of people feel the same way. He had that amazing match with The Undertaker at SummerSlam. Unfortunately, the Montreal Screwjob happened afterwards, but let me tell you something. A lot of the shit he was doing with that new Hart Foundation, that was badass. Some of Bret Hart's best work. Let's go to The Rock. WWE wanted him to be Rocky Maivia, smiling, waving at the fans, and the fans resented him because they felt like their intelligence was being insulted. And that's something else we'll get into later. He got hurt. Got a call from JR. Listen, we're going to switch you heel because it's not working. But did they insult the fans' intelligence and continue to shove him down their throat and hammer him down their throats as Rocky Maivia? No. They recognized it wasn't working. And they turned him heel. And he turned into The Rock. Do I have to go any further? The rest is history. Now let's go to the greatest heel of them all. In my opinion, much as I hate the guy, Hollywood Hulk Hogan is the greatest wrestling villain I've ever seen. In-ring worker, villain-wise. Because the greatest villain of all time is Mr. McMahon, who in a way also fits this category. Hulk Hogan, possibly the best babyface of all time. He was getting booed. The fans were sick and tired of it. Now, if the fans could get sick and tired of Hulk Hogan, why is anyone else immune to that? That's a question I'd like you to answer, Travis. Maybe you can answer in the comments section. How is it that the fans can get tired of Hulk Hogan, but they aren't allowed to get tired of other people? To me, that doesn't make any sense. And what is even more damning about it, when Hulk Hogan turned heel and joined the NWO, That is arguably the best run he ever had. Because the NWO angle brought WCW this close to putting the WWE out of business. That's a pretty big accomplishment. And the NWO wouldn't have worked without Hollywood Hulk Hogan because he was such a beloved face. And when he turned, it meant something. It wasn't just a regular, hero who's not doing anything so he turns heel. No. This meant something. People actually were bothered by that. They wanted to see Hogan get his ass kicked. Even more so. Now let's go to Vince McMahon. Vince was always, any classic WWE fan knows, Vince was always the straight commentator. He was the babyface commentator. He wanted to keep doing that after Montreal. He was considering doing so after WrestleMania 14, but when he saw that the hatred towards him wasn't going away, he didn't fight it. He said, you know what Vince McMahon turned around and said? Okay, and this is off the one of the DVDs. I don't remember which one. It's either the McMahon DVD or the Monday Night Wars DVD. It's one of the two, guys. Sorry, I can't think of it. He said, if the crowd wants to dislike me, I'm going to give them reasons to dislike me. And they ended up making a ton of money off of it. What is so bad about that, Travis? I ask you. What is so bad about taking a guy that the crowd is clearly against, or at least the majority of the crowd, hint, hint, what is so bad about taking that venom that they feel, turning it around on them, and making money off of it? I ask you, what would have been the value of John Cena being a heel against CM Punk when he was on the rise? What would the money have been if instead of Randy Orton against Daniel Bryan, it was John Cena? How believable would it have been if Vince McMahon would have came out and said, listen, John Cena's the face of our company. We don't want Daniel Bryan because he doesn't look the part. How believable would that have been? You know what that is? You're telling the fans the story they want to be told. I don't understand what's so difficult about that. And now we'll get into the last thing that I look for in pro wrestling. And it's something I look for in every part of life. I don't like having my intelligence insulted. That pisses me off. So if you're insulting my intelligence, you're giving me a reason to ignore you. Today is the 22nd week in a row that I have not watched Monday Night Raw. And I'll tell you why. Because every time I watch Monday Night Raw, I feel like my intelligence is being insulted, and I feel like I've wasted my time. And this ties in together. 3 and 4 tie in together. I don't like having my intelligence insulted, and I don't like feeling like I've wasted my time. And everything involving makes me laugh. And like I said, I promised not to turn this into hate, but everything involving John Felix Anthony Cena is a gigantic, ginormous waste of time. It is a waste of time. You know it's a waste of time. As much as you like the guy, you know every match he's in is a waste of time. Because it ends one of two ways. Either he loses due to cheating or interference, or he wins clean. 9 times out of 10, it's one or the other. And whenever he does lose, there's always some bullshit excuse. There's always some sort of circumstances that are put into it by either the announcers or Cena himself. And you know he does that. So why should anyone bother caring? I'll give you another example. In any good story, the protagonist, the hero, has barriers, obstacles, and problems to overcome. What problems does John Cena have to overcome? Nothing. Do you understand why, though? Because he is the problem. He is the obstacle. Why do you think the fans cheer his opponents so much? Why do you think the fans are always for his opponents whenever they're beating him up? Because the whole point of pro wrestling, from a fan's perspective, is you cheer the guy you feel needs your help to win. Why do you think the crowd clamored toward Daniel Bryan so much? because they genuinely believed that without their support he would not succeed, because they knew that the company was throwing everything in his way, that there was no way for him to get what he deserved. Why do you think the fans rebelled the way they did? Because they saw it for what it was. The WWE was fucking him over and they weren't having it. When's the last time you've seen the fans rebel like that for Cena? It hasn't happened. The guy hasn't been universally over since 2005. If that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what will. He ultimately is the barrier that every wrestler has to overcome and ultimately has no chance to. Because the WWE will not allow that. That's why, as a hero, he has no place anymore. Because he has no obstacles, no barriers, and no problems to overcome. Zero. What barriers does he have to overcome? He beat the entire Nexus on his own. He pinned The Rock. He's beaten everybody. Everybody. Think of it this way as well, Travis. He has never lost a feud clean. Name a feud that he lost clean. Or someone that he didn't get the last laugh on. There is nobody. There is nobody. And that's why he gets booed the way he does. For all the reasons I just gave you, there is no story to anything that he's in, because it's always LOL, Cena wins. His character is insulting to everyone's intelligence, because he, deep down, he knows how hated he is. But he puts on that fake smile, in other words, to tell the audience, you don't matter. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and you'll learn to like it. And he wastes everybody's time. Like this guy, Kevin Owens. They had a chance to make a new star. They had a chance to make a star, a top star. See, some people confuse me sometimes when I say I want new stars. No. I want new top stars. Top level guys. Brock Lesnar is not the answer. The Undertaker, Triple H, The Rock they are not the answer. Do you understand why they're not the answer? Because they will not be options for very much longer. Randy Orton's career may be over, unfortunately for him and his family. And that sucks for him, and I wish him the best. If it was Cena, I would say the same thing. I wish no injury on anybody. The point I'm trying to make is, it is now 2016. It is the 4th day of 2016. When is it going to be time to lay the groundwork for the next generation? Because I see a bunch of guys like Bray Wyatt, Dean Ambrose, Cesaro, Neville, Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins. You could even make an argument for him, because as the WWE Champion, he was a joke. A colossal joke. And the last straw for me when it came to Seth Rollins was this. He could lose 150% clean to John Cena, but 20 minutes later he could beat Sting fresh as a fucking daisy. What does that say about Sting? Who was the #1 babyface of WCW when they were kicking the shit out of the WWE. Sting didn't have to come out and hug babies and kiss the fans' ass. You know what Sting had to do? Allow me to demonstrate. That's all Sting had to do. All Sting had to do was point his baseball bat at whoever the hell was in the ring, and the fans would go nuts, and they would change the channel to see him. All Stone Cold Steve Austin had to do was this. Didn't matter. All The Rock had to do was this. I mean, come on now. So to answer your question, Travis, what I look for in pro wrestling is compelling storylines, characters that I should care about, my intelligence not being insulted, and my time not being wasted. Now I ask you, to end this, is that really asking much? As a viewer, is that me asking too much? Because when I say I clamor for the days of old, most people automatically think of, 50-foot swan dives off of cages, tons of blood, tits, ass, the whole Attitude Era, Ruthless Aggression deal. No, no, no. See, that's not what I look for. They're fun from time to time. I think that blood and violence should be, personally, I don't know what you guys think, but I think that the blood and the violence should only be reserved for the last chapter of a feud, like Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker did last year, which I thought was very good. You know, you don't need to have blood and guts every week, not even every month. But if you have a rivalry that's going on for like 4, 5, 6 months, it's like Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins. That Hell in a Cell match should have been a bloodbath because of how long that rivalry was going on and how intense that it was and all the shit that was involved in it. You don't do it for a one-off feud. You do that for the long-time feuds, the feuds that are going on for a couple of months. It's like, I'll use this as the ultimate example. The Undertaker versus Randy Orton from 2005. That rivalry started at WrestleMania 21. It went all the way to December, Armageddon. That was the first time you saw either man bleed in that feud. But that's all that was needed. That was enough to show you, okay, this is the final chapter. These guys are going to literally kill each other until only one of them is left standing in that cell. I don't need blood and guts to be entertained. I really don't. And that's the frustrating part for me the most, because I don't ask for much. I really don't ask for much. Give me compelling characters, give me good storylines, don't waste my time, and don't insult my intelligence. Now, Travis, I ask you, in my response to your question, I respond with another question. Is that asking too much?